sea kind of colour as well. So I'm going to use this grey, which is quite nice. It feels like it's a bit grey, doesn't it? That sort of bluey. Pick up some of that blue there, I think. Just going to pick some of that bit of blue, a bit more of that blue up there as well. And I think if you can kind of imagine what we're doing, you know, when we get them back to the studio, you can kind of imagine again about sort of tearing them up and collaging and propping things down. Just try and get some of that movement of the waves in there a little bit. Get a bit more of that.
Probably good using this cheaper paint for this because it's a lot more fluid, isn't it? It comes out easier.
It's a bit yellow, isn't it?
It's on the paper now.
It's my palette. Just like a bit of that extra colour in there. Like I said, I'm just trying to get that sense of the movement and the rhythm. So, you know, for a first one, that's probably enough.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to do too much. I don't want to overdo it, and then you get going, move on to another one. Sometimes, you know, just getting those first ones going can be quite nice. So a bit of extra, a bit of random stuff going on there, which is quite nice. I'll just look a little bit further down this way this time. So just like the shape of these big dark rocks here coming that way, just getting the sense of it moving around up there. Just kind of get a feel of that, you know, when you can sort of have a feel about the shapes in the landscape, and just kind of, you know, if it's, you know, you can go, oh, it's that kind of thing, and then you can make a mark which sort of has that sort of shape to it as well. I think immediately, you know, sometimes it just takes a little bit of looking at it, because already I'm sort of starting to feel like I've got a bit more energy in this one than the first one, now that I've had a chance to sort of look at it. You know, I was saying yesterday about how the more time you spend looking at the landscape, the more you see in it. You know, so as you go through the morning, your paintings kind of, you know, each painting will kind of push you in a slightly different direction. So kind of looking up there with those kind of waves coming in, hitting there. That's the nice thing about painting things that are moving, I think, is that you can't ever really get hold of the shape of them, you know, because they're changing the whole time. It's quite nice to, you know, to paint things that don't ever stand still, because then all you got to do is you got to get the sense of it, you got to get the feeling behind it, and work with that rather than thinking about, oh, it's this exact shape. With that wave down the front here.
I know, it's the colour.
You're very scared of that colour, aren't you?
I'm scared of the colour.
You'll be alright, you'll be fine.
Yeah, just do what he's doing.
You'll be fine. And like I said, you know, we're talking about limited palette. What have I used here? I've used
3 colours.
Yeah, kind of 3 colours. So a bit of the grey. I mean, if you haven't got this grey, I mean, you can borrow some of mine if you want, but it was just kind of right for that as a starting point for that kind of muted grey. But using sandy colour.
Buff's a good colour, isn't it?
Yeah, but I didn't use it there. That's yellow and a bit of burnt sienna.
Yeah.
and a bit of lemon yellow and a bit of white. So there isn't actually any of that buff in that one.
Actually, really good colour.
So you know, those mid-tones I was saying, you know, you don't really need them. They're just quite handy sometimes to have something you can just take straight out of a tube. But really, you don't really need to have them. They're just extras, really. You know, just sometimes it's handy to just have a mid-tone that you can just squeeze straight out of a tube. Just like the idea of the movement of the froth at the top of the waves to come in and make a mark. Just like I was saying about, you know, you can't quite ever really draw those frothy marks that happen on the top of the waves, but you can kind of find a mark that sort of is a bit like it, maybe. It's kind of slightly wobbly, twisting kind of mark. So that'll probably do for that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think immediately, you know, just from the first one to the second one, you start to get a feel for where you are and what you're doing. And yeah, this is not by any means a definitive painting of this scene, but I think it says something about it. It says something about the dark rocks and something about the bit of the colour of the sandy rock in front, the movement of the waves, the bluey greyness of the sea.
Yeah.
So it's got a few of those characteristics in there. And so when I get back to the studio and I look at that and I start collaging it and cropping it, I think it will really remind me of being here and thinking about that. And, you know, be able to do a series of work based on this you know, experience of being out here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, you know, what I want you to take from that is really, again, it's that attitude, the way I'm going at it, pushing, chucking the paint on. Not trying to draw every little bit, just trying to get something of the characteristics of what's in front of you, but just, you know, throw the paint on. Use enough paint that you can push it around. Don't use masses of colours so it's all going to get all muddy. And although I am putting quite a bit of paint on, I'm being quite vigorous with it. It's not all getting mushed together, and I'm not using very much water, so it's mostly neat paint. Yeah, so it's a little bit of water to get it moving, but I'm not using it all kind of washy. So the paper's not getting waterlogged, so it's taking the paint's getting sucked into the paper and drying quite fast. I think it's when they take a long time to dry when they get waterlogged.
Yeah.
The actual paint itself gets a skin, film over it very quickly and dries quite fast. So, yeah. So there you go. There you go.